So in your packet, you will see a flyer. This is going to be our next presentation is about sex ed. And Beth Pruitt from Decisions, Choices, and Options, a sexual risk avoidance program, was going to be speaking with us today, but she has the flu. But a great thing happened, not that part, but another great thing. Jason Mann is the head of the Alabama Coalition for Sexual Risk Avoidance Programs. And he was coming to the conference anyway today. So he is going to be speaking on her behalf but about this issue. So one thing is very confusing for me is sexual risk avoidance or sexual risk reduction. What's the deal? So let me just break it down for you real quick. Sexual risk reduction is the comprehensive, nasty sex ed stuff with all the graphic pictures. They don't want to avoid risk, they just want to reduce it. So sexual risk reduction is the comprehensive graphic stuff we're trying to move away from. But sexual risk avoidance, hey, let's keep these kids from having all these problems. Let's teach them how to make good choices and how, teach them the good stuff, and then we just avoid it. So if that helps you remember, great. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you a little bit, have those handy for you. And Jason, man, you drove 5 hours to get here today. And we're so glad you did, because we wouldn't have had anybody else to take your place right now. So come on up.
You are going to have to drink through a fire hose because I think I've got 20 minutes. Oh, 25. All right, 5 extra minutes. The other handout that goes with the one she showed you is this one. So this introduces Representative Susan DuBose. She sponsored the bill in the House side 2 years ago, and then Senator Shay Shelnut represented the bill in the Senate last year. And 2 years in a row, the bill has run into complications with getting passed. And it's not so much specifically about the bill, but there were other things that were surrounding certain aspects of the political arena where the bill just didn't make it through. But Senator Shelnut has confirmed that this year is the year. We're going to get it passed. So I like Dr. Frank's approach. He does a deep dive into the data, the research, a very scientific approach, putting things to the test to see what holds up and what doesn't hold up to what is true. And it's always fascinating to me because my area of concentration, I've actually been doing sexual risk avoidance education since 2009. And doing deep dives into the data that surrounds teens, human sexuality, marriage, family, fatherhood, because that's another area where I specialize in my local organization is fatherhood mentorship. It's always been fascinating to me to discover that proper research that is done with an integrity, it always confirms and validates the truth of God's Word when it's done with integrity. And that type of evidence and research is what we use in the sexual risk avoidance arena to be able to convey the truths of what's necessary when it comes to living a lifestyle that avoids sexual risk. Now, I know it's easy sometimes just to kind of say, all right, this is a sex education arena. We can put that in a box on the side and we can deal with that separately from everything else. In 1934, J.D. Unwin, he was a social anthropologist from Great Britain, and he paired up with a team of researchers. And he had a theory, and he postulated in his theory that how societies manage human sexuality is a predictor as to whether that society thrives or dies. And so that was his theory. And for the next 10 years, with his team of researchers, they set about to not only embed themselves with present-day cultures and societies, but they also did critical reviews of past societies, and they analyzed 86 different nations, societies, and cultures. And what he ultimately determined through his research, and this was irrespective of their religious choices, but any society that practiced strict chastity, no sex outside of marriage, And they coupled that with absolute monogamy, which means once you're married, that's your partner for life. Those were the most thriving societies that the world has ever seen. So this issue of teens and sex, it's not a box that can be set aside. It's a societal issue. And they even determined that certain societies in history that have ultimately fallen is because they gave themselves over to the vices of sexual pleasure. And that's what he determined in his research. He looked at cultural energy, industrial energy, economic energy, the creative energies, academic energies. And all of these were indicators as to whether they were moving in a positive direction or a negative direction as to whether they were a thriving society or not. And the looser they got with sexual boundaries, the worse the society went. Just think about where we're at in America today. There's a very important piece of legislation that's coming up this year. It came up for the last 2 years, and this year it's already been filed, and it's Senate Bill 3. Senate Bill 3 is the Sexual Risk Avoidance Education Bill, and I want to take a minute to be able to convey why it's important that this bill passes this year and why you, whether you're a representative legislature, whether you're an activist in an organization, or you're just a member in your community, why your voice is important to make sure that awareness for sexual risk avoidance is made known in your area. What we want to do is we want to ensure that our youth, the youth of our state, that they're learning the value and the benefits of strict chastity and absolute monogamy. Because research has proven, and still proves today, if you're willing to do a deep dive into National Institutes of Health, Health and Human Services, Centers for Disease and Control, if you're willing to do a deep dive into the data that they have present today, it proves what J.D. Unwin proved in 1934. By the way, the title of his book and the findings of his research is Sex and Culture. It's not an easy read, but it's worth reading. So the issue that we're dealing with when it comes to why is legislature important for a subject like this, well, this would not be the only time that we have enacted laws to regulate human sexuality. We have many laws that regulate human sexuality, and many laws that benefit us as a human race, because virtue jurisprudence dictates that we should ethically and morally regulate sexuality in such a manner that is a beneficial thing to those that engage in it. Because if we don't, then we're just dealing with a society that's going to slowly degrade. And we have proponents in America, comprehensive sex ed or sexual risk reduction, those are synonymous terms, that they push perverted content into the minds of our children. And they're in Alabama schools. ACASH is one of those organizations. I asked them to do a little live interaction so you could see. I like smoking guns of evidence. So ACASH, first thing I want you to do is if you go up to who we are and core beliefs. And then I want you to scroll down, and there's 6 blocks there. They have a core beliefs, and I want y'all to be able to see the bottom middle block. And you're going to see the core beliefs of some of their ideologies when it comes to what they promote in the classroom. Now, we know that President Trump recently reaffirmed that there's only 2 genders. ACASH doesn't believe in that. So that's their core beliefs. This is the Alabama Campaign for Adolescent Sexual Health. By the way, they're already canvassing the state with anti-SB3 information. They're already sending out emails because they know the bill's been filed, and they're already trying to rally their forces to defeat it before it even gets started. The next thing I want you to do is go up to the top, and you're going to see a tab, I think it's Partner Organizations. Yes, Partners. So now go down to the organization called the Sex Education Collaborative, if you'll click on that one. And then up at the top, member organizations. Scroll down a little. Oh, wait, right there. Y'all see anything strange about one of their partner organizations? Listen, Dr. Frank mentioned the abortion pill, and I know someone's about to come up and talk about that, and I don't want to steal any thunder. But the history of the abortion pill is actually more sinister than that. If you've not heard of Seth Gruber and the 1916 Project, you need to look it up. So Planned Parenthood, there's connections with them in the Nazi Party of Germany, and the gases that were made in Auschwitz to kill Jews, the same companies made RU-486. You can look it up, 1916. Seth Gruber has all the research to back that up. It's a sinister thing, and Planned Parenthood is a sinister organization. And the content that they've been trying to push into the schools for decades is perverse and is destructive, not only to our kids, but our society as a whole. Comprehensive sex ed, it is perverse sexual content. It hypersexualizes children. It promotes an anything goes for youth when it comes to sexual expression. And as Becky said, their primary goal is simply to reduce risk by emphasizing contraceptive. They will demonstrate on anatomically correct models on how to apply a condom to kids in middle school. What they do is they fail to address the holistic and the optimal health message when it comes to teens, because I don't know if y'all know this, but sex is never just physical. It affects the whole person. So shouldn't we be addressing the whole person? Well, according to the State Board of Education in 2019, when they developed the health education standards for students in the state of Alabama, they said there's 6 dimensions of health that we should be addressing, not just the physical. So let's do a quick rundown of those. So when it comes to intellectual health, that's one of the 6. By the way, in the health education standards for the state of Alabama, there's 8 content standards that are required to be covered, and there's 23 sub-content standards that are required to be covered. And I know valid and affirmed sexual risk avoidance education programs throughout the state, if they're teaching it properly, then they will meet all 8 and all 23 of those content standards that the state requires. And all of the coalition partners in the Alabama Sexual Risk Avoidance Education Coalition, they all provide this service free of charge in their communities. It doesn't cost the school system a dime. It's something they do with community partners that underwrite the programs. But let's talk about intellectual health. According to the National Institutes for Health, sexually active students, they have a 46% less chance of earning a high school diploma. Students that avoid sexual activity during high school, they're 60% less likely to be expelled, 50% less likely to drop out, and they're twice as likely to go on to graduate from college. Sex has a direct impact on their intellectual and academic performance. Mentally, if you go to the CDC's Youth Risk Surveillance Survey, they do this annually, and about every 10 years they put out the results of this data. They actually have identified, according to their 2023 results, that there is a major mental health crisis with teens in America. There's a lot of things contributing to that, but based on this data, teen sex makes the issue worse. And here's how. For teens that have had sex, 66% of them express feelings of depression, sadness, and hopelessness. For teens that have not had sex in high school, 47% of them express the same. That's a 19% swing in a positive direction simply by eliminating sex from the equation. When it comes to their emotional well-being, when it comes to self-harm, of those who have had sex, 35% of teens actually consider suicide. For those that have not had sex, 21% consider suicide. That's a 14% swing just by eliminating sex from the equation. For those that actually attempted suicide, which resulted in injury, 5% of teens that were sexually active actually tried to commit suicide. And for those that have not had sex, only 1%. 5 times less likely to actually attempt suicide because sex is not present. And it's not always a cause and effect, but there's a definite correlation between teen sexual activity and how it's affecting the whole person. Comprehensive sex ed, it's all physical, just wear a condom and take birth control. That's how they approach it. Or maybe abortion. Which, by the way, if you look on the CDC and you're trying to track the numbers of teen pregnancy rates with the CDC, you won't find it. You'll find teen birth rates, but those are 2 drastically different things. And you can decrease birth rates when you're pumping abortion pills, even into a state like Alabama. I won't steal the thunder of the next person. That's their. But there are disparities in the data. When it comes to the social impacts of what's going on with teens and sexuality, We talked about the coming of the storm earlier. We're in reaction mode. The storm is here. In so many ways, we're just reacting to the issue of teen. It is epidemic proportions. It really is. Physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, we're at epidemic proportions of how it's affecting the youth population when it comes to teens and sexuality. Think about these normalized behaviors just through the use of social media. Voyeurism, being recorded without your permission, whether it's sexual or not, we've normalized it. Sexting, revenge porn. Do y'all know what AI is able to do these days? It's happening in Louisiana. There's a news story right now where middle school students have 10 counts of felony charges against him because he took pictures of girls on a school bus and used AI to make them into nude pictures. Not only that, but in comprehensive sex ed, they want to be teaching kids as young as 8 years old. They want to get into third grade classrooms. That's what happened in Florida when Governor DeSantis went to war with Disney. It was all because of amaze.org, that website. Go check that out if you want to be thoroughly disgusted. They have cartoons that normalize child masturbation. That's comprehensive sex ed. They over-sexualize our kids. They normalize their sexual behavior at that age. And they ignore the large negative ramifications that we're dealing with because of the teens. The family health is in a crisis. Cohabitation is normalized. And there are mounds of data that prove how destructive cohabitation is. Mounds of data. Not only that, but we're living in a system of government support that pushes fathers out of the house. To qualify for WIC, Medicaid, Medicare, welfare, typically, if you do dual person income, then you don't qualify. But do y'all understand the common denominator factor of the absent father and what it's doing to kids? The father's not in the house. Every teen risk behavior that we're dealing with, if you align them all up, the common denominator is the fact that they don't have a father in the home that's helping them. But our government system pushes the father out. So we got these social issues. Physical, that's just a piece of the puzzle. 19 million new STD infections every year, and 50% of those new infections are kids between the ages of 15 and 24. 50% of the new STD infections. And it comes at a cost of about $16 billion every year of medical costs dealing with STDs. Epidemic proportions. Then when you got teen pregnancy, we have to consider how many grandparents are having to raise their grandkids because of the epidemic of teen parenting. And we can't leave out the spiritual aspect, can we? We know Judeo-Christian values is what founded America, and we know what the Bible says about marriage: one man, one woman, married for life. And that's where sex is supposed to be because that's where it's safest and it does less harm. So let's look at other religions. So there's 7 major world religions that we can kind of cite: Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Buddhism, and humanism. How many of those do you think promote sex and marriage only? 6 out of 7. There's not but one that says sex is anything goes, and that's the humanist worldview. All the other major religions, so we're talking about spiritual health. Teens are getting this pop culture message, no matter what their home core beliefs are, that sex is okay anywhere, anytime with anyone, and it's causing an internal conflict with their own spiritual beliefs. Issues at home because their parents are saying, no, you can't, but all their friends and the famous rap stars are saying, yes, you can. So even in their spiritual health, we're having an issue. I want to cover a few quick myths when it comes to sexual risk avoidance. The first one is it's not abstinence-only education. We don't just stand up in a classroom and say, hey, kids, don't have sex, and then close the book. No, it's way beyond that. We've got to have the conversation about every dimension of their health and well-being. They've got to understand how it impacts the whole person. Not only that, but we're wanting to equip them with the knowledge and the skills, refusal skills, coping skills, resiliency skills, things like practicing honesty, integrity, loyalty, these things that build healthy relationships. All of those are components of sexual risk avoidance education. It is so much more than just abstinence education. I think that limits what we're actually trying to do. They also say that when we normalize the concept of marriage, then we're stigmatizing and marginalizing those in single-parent homes. Any proper sexual risk avoidance education program, we're going to applaud the heroic effort of single parenting, because some people are doing it with no choice of their own. And it is a heroic effort. My mother was a single mom. And it's a hard job to be a single parent, right? So what we're trying to do is lift up those single parents in the eyes of the kids and then communicate to them that we still have research that validates the two-parent home is the more optimal choice. It's not everybody has a choice in that. It happens. But the most optimal outcome is for them to wait until they're married and then have kids, because that's an optimal outcome for them and their children. And we have the research that backs that up. So no one's trying to marginalize anyone when it comes to that. When it comes to contraceptive, we talk about condoms and birth control, but we have to talk about the efficacy of those things. How effective are they really? Because there's not but one 100% way to avoid all harms with sexual contact, and that's don't do it. Everything else has limitations. No matter what the percentage is, we have to educate them on the reality of how effective condoms and birth control are. So we do cover contraceptive. But ACASH will have you believe, well, we don't teach on contraceptive and we leave them vulnerable. That's not true. We teach about it. We just make them understand it has limitations. It also said one of the biggest things that we've got to make sure that we're doing is the accuracy of our information. So evidence-based, age-appropriate, science-backed. We do. The CDC is one of our primary resources when it comes to the information about teens, sexuality, and STDs and what's affecting them and how it's negatively affecting them. That's the data that we rely on to be able to teach in the classrooms. It's not opinions. We don't go in with testimonies. We go in with the facts, and we go in with truth, because that's what they need. So we are evidence-based. Abstinence is a program that we're seeking to fully educate teens about sexuality. We are a primary prevention, holistic, optimal health program. We're age appropriate. We don't do anatomical displays. We don't give out contraceptives in the classroom. None of that's necessary. They get the message without all of that. That's not who we are. We're trying to teach them skills like self-control. We want them to identify positive character traits in other people that might be someone they want to spend the rest of their life with, and to recognize the red flags in people they don't want to spend the rest of their life with. The last thing I'm going to sum up with on this, we got a little less than 5 minutes, and I know we want time for questions. Last year, Act 2025-411, as a result of SB 289 that passed, all Alabama public schools starting next year will be required to teach the success sequence. It's a 3-tiered program, right? Which is graduate high school, get a job, and get married before you have kids. That's it. It's that simple. And any kid, no matter what demographic they come from, it doesn't matter if they're impoverished or not, it doesn't matter what demographic they come from, if they follow the success sequence, they have less than a 2% chance of ever living in poverty. Well, guess what? A proper sexual risk avoidance program already teaches the success sequence, because that's the primary message we're trying to get across. Right now in your life as a teenager, it's not about sex and dating and relationships. Right now, get your education done, think about your career, then when you get married, then think about a family. That's it. That's what sexual risk avoidance does. So if it's going to be required across the state, then why not use resources that have been here for decades? My organization's been in Baldwin County for 30 years teaching sexual risk avoidance. DCO, who Beth was going to be, they've been teaching it for 2.5 decades, 25 years. We've been in the state. We have 19 partners throughout the state in our coalition that has been teaching sexual risk avoidance for decades. We're certified as sexual risk avoidance specialists. We've taught almost 30,000 students, and if you look at the numbers, we're having a positive swing impact. We're having a 26% increase in teens that are saying, I want to save sex for marriage. And that's the goal, is delay sexual initiation so that they can experience a healthier life outcome. Because I don't think it's just about sex ed. I think it's about our society, as J.D. Unwin's research proves, and we've got to do something about it.